noite, pessoal! Sejam todos muito bem-vindos ao MBA USP Exalc. Eu sou Luciano Santos e hoje estou aqui um pouquinho fora do horário habitual de vocês para essa palestra mais do que especial que o PSEG preparou para vocês. O título da palestra é Liderar e Treinar em Tempos Incertos com Inteligência Emocional e Ressonância. Para essa palestra, a gente conta aqui com o professor Loren Dick, titular de gestão na Universidade de La Verne. E para ajudar também na interação de vocês com o professor, a gente está aqui com a Luísa, que vai ser a nossa intérprete. Seja bem-vinda, Luísa.
Oi, Luciano, obrigada. Eu sou a Luísa, trabalho aqui no PSEG, na equipe de tradução. Eu vou estar auxiliando, então, a comunicação entre vocês e o professor Loren Dick. Então, podem ir mandando já as perguntas, que eu já vou deixando tudo pronto, traduzido, para o professor responder no final.
Isso aí, Luísa, muito obrigado. Pessoal, hoje a gente está num ambiente novo, né, no chat aí. Então, eu peço que vocês mandem uma mensagem, porque vocês precisam fazer o cadastro, tá? Assim que vocês mandarem uma mensagem, vai subir uma caixinha para vocês fazerem um novo cadastro. E como a palestra vai ser ministrada toda em inglês, hoje a gente conta também com o Skylar, que vai gerar as legendas automáticas. Elas vão estar no canal 3, pessoal. Embaixo do vídeo aí, vocês vão lá e selecionam o canal 3, tá bom? Na transmissão. E para a gente não se demorar mais, então, queria dar as boas-vindas ao professor Loren Dick. Seja bem-vindo, professor.
All right, thank you very much. Welcome, everybody, and thank you for coming and joining us. Thank you so much for the University of Sao Paulo, and thank you so much for IBS, International Business School, for inviting me to be with you tonight. Luciana, I'm sure you said a whole bunch of nice things about me, so I hope that was good. Well, welcome. It's just fantastic to be with you. I really wish I could see all you lovely people, because I enjoy always my time so much being with you and the wonderful students that do join us here at the University of La Verne in Southern California. So my talk today is leading and coaching in uncertain times with emotional intelligence and resonance. So I hope you're ready. Our agenda for today is to introduce the subject of emotional intelligence, resonant relationships, and coaching with distinctive human strengths. These are three topics near and dear to my heart, and also ones in which that we will address, in our course when you folks are able to come down. So the through line through those three topics, or the pathway, if you will, are emotions. So my question to you is, why do emotions matter? Why should we even talk about emotions at work? I'm not seeing the chat box. This is supposed to be where the chat kicks in. For some reason, I'm not seeing the chat box. I don't know if you can help me with that, Lucia or Lucina.
Hi, Professor. I sent you a few messages. I'm not entirely sure. Maybe the three top ellipses again should be the same.
Mm-hmm. Nope, not seeing it. I keep clicking on chat, and I don't get to see your good comments.
Professor, eu mandei algumas mensagens aqui Luísa, se você puder ler para ele, o pessoal está falando que sim, importa sim, e porque somos feitos de
Oh, there they are.
emoção.
Okay, I got it. I got it. Hey, they came up. All right, let's try this again. Where'd they go? All right, so we did get some responses. Yes, it matters because we are made of emotions. It's part of us. Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. And I would even go so far as to say that it's our emotions move us. That's the primary message here, is that emotions move us, and our emotions are our first response to any stimuli. So oftentimes we hear in business, oh, I'm just, I take emotions out of the equation and I just focus on the facts. Well, actually, that's fundamentally, I believe impossible, because we're physiologically wired to have an emotional reaction first, and then we use our big brain and we make sense of things. And so our response is always emotional. And so emotions are primal, they're our first response. And to give it context for our discussion today, the primary job of a leader is to create resonance with others, to create that emotional connection with people that we work with, to be in tune with others. And the reason why a resonance is the primary job of leadership is that I believe leadership is a relationship. It's not about giving orders or falling in alignment, but it's about building a relationship. So that kind of serves as the context, for our discussions. And so as leaders, and some of you probably are already leaders and managers in your organizations, and for those of you aspiring to be, we'll need to know how to manage those emotions, your own emotions, as well as the emotions of others. So in terms of what we're facing in terms of our leadership horizon, if you will, or what's ahead of us, as we all know, we're facing such crazy, unpredictable future. And as a result, though, organizations are shifting, and the leadership agenda, the leadership horizon as well, is also changing. Technology more important, globalization and expansion, and the demographics were much more diverse now than we've ever been, and the speed of change, we're just constantly moving. So with all this, employees are looking for some sense of stability, some sense making, if you will, and qualities like integrity, trust, respect, some individuals that they can count on. So effective leadership has never been more vital than it is today and going forward. And organizations, as well as leadership, they're evolving and they're changing. We're moving very much from the left side of your screen to the right side, where instead of everything's based on the position you hold and the rules that are put in place, now it's more knowledge sharing is power. So before we would hold on to knowledge as, oh, I've got the knowledge, and so that makes me important. Whereas now we're shifting and we're moving towards much more of a networked society. And now as a leader, as soon as you have that information that's of value, that knowledge, you want to get it out there and you want to share it. And as a result of this new dynamic, we're also seeing fewer management levels, more cross-functional teams, more focus on values than we have ever experienced before. So my question to you now is, what are the individual skills needed to create, to lead, grow this evolving organization and its employees? So what are the critical skills? What's important? And specifically, what makes someone an effective leader versus a mediocre leader? So I've got a little exercise for you. I call it whimsically the bosses from hell, and bosses from heaven and the bosses from hell exercise. And so what I want you each to do is to take out a sheet of paper or open up a page on your laptop. or if you can take notes on your cell phone, think of 2 specific bosses or managers you've had, or maybe professors that you've had, people that have been in that kind of leadership role for you, and write their initials at the top of each column, and underneath each person's initials, write their notes, write some notes describing their behaviors, their abilities, style, and impact on you and others. How would you characterize them? These bosses from hell and bosses from heaven. So something like this. So please take a few minutes and reflect back on who have been, your darling bosses and those bosses from hell. So I'll give you another minute to write a few notes about bosses from heaven and bosses from hell, and then we'll see what you got. Oh, here we're starting to get some responses in. All right. I like this message first coming in about emotions. People are different. People have different reactions to a bunch of situations. That's why I reason that emotions are so important. All right. So about the critical skills, to understand people's cultures and backgrounds. Bosses from heaven have patience, time management. The best bosses are the ones that trusted you. Oh, beautiful. Trusted you could do your job and did not micromanage. Yeah, we really don't like those micromanagers, right? give us the instructions, give us what it is that we want. You want us to do, and then let us be. So please, let's have some more responses. What have been your experiences with bosses from heaven versus bosses from hell? Bosses from heaven let you try new things. Yeah, so they're willing to take a risk, right? As we saw in the previous slide, the old organization was very risk averse, very traditional, no change. The new organization has to be, riskier and be willing to experiment. Bosses from hell need to control every second of the schedule. Don't trust you. Make you feel like you're being babysat. Yeah, there you go. Absolutely. Bosses from hell don't listen to negative feedback. Yeah, bosses just want you to sort of gloss over everything and tell them everything's okay and that they're wonderful. But instead we know that that's not always the case. The best bosses motivate you to study and learn. Absolutely. All right, we'll give you another few seconds and then we'll move on. All right, so listening seems to be very important among you folks, which is great. Yeah, best boss I had, listened to the team. Bosses from heaven are good listeners. Yeah, we want people to understand us, and the way they do that is they listen. They ask us. They ask us, what our opinion is, and they involve us, and not just for namesake, but to involve us for in actual making some decisions, right? And bosses from heaven want you to succeed, right? Wonderful. Okay, thank you so much. So now my question to you is, if we could have broke out, as we do in class, have you break out and see what some of the themes are. But the question then becomes is, what's the difference between the bosses from heaven and the bosses from hell? What's the difference? We put this up on the screen. What's the difference from these folks on the left side to the right side? Well, I would say it's emotional intelligence, the capacity to recognize our own feelings and those of others, for motivating ourselves, for managing emotions well in ourselves and in our relationships. So that's Goldman's definition. And it's a good one, it's long, but the way I like to look at it more simply is just being smart about our emotions. So knowing how you're feeling, and also how your feeling has an impact on others, right? So if I'm really up today, really excited, like today, I'm really in a good place. I'm getting to be with you folks. I have a golden retriever, and he's my buddy, and it's International Golden Retriever Day. You can Google it, and it was news to me, and I thought, well, that's just joy. So I posted it on Facebook, and that made me happy. I had a great workout. So knowing that, knowing I'm bringing that exuberance to you, that I know that can possibly have some positive impact, on you folks. So recognizing your own feelings and the impact that they have on others, as well as recognizing the impact that, or rather the emotions that others are experiencing. So we can't be blinded to that. We have to recognize and honor and appreciate the emotions of others. And then likewise, we need to be able to manage our own emotions so that, if I'm really, really high and in a good place, and maybe you're not, well, maybe I got to tone it down a notch in order to, for you to hear me and for me to hear you, right? Because it's all about establishing this resonance. And then likewise, emotions of others in a group, you need to be able to read others. So if you're in a team meeting, and others seem to be, looking down, yawning a lot, well, maybe they're bored. Maybe we need to change things up somewhat, right? So as a leader, you need to be able to know your emotions and emotions of others, as well as when and how to intervene and to address the issues of yourself as well as others. And emotionally intelligent leaders, they know their values and, as I mentioned, know their emotions and how to use that knowledge, because it's very, very powerful. And read the emotions of others, not get hijacked by our emotions. I mean, we're all human and things happen, but sometimes we can get, overly worked up about our own emotions, and that becomes, can become very problematic and get us all into a tizzy. I know one time I was giving a lecture at in Hawaii at the University of Hawaii. A friend of mine asked me to come down and talk, and I was familiar with where the islands and where I was on Maui, but I'd come from a different end of the island. And so I got into traffic that I didn't expect, and I'm there, oh no, I'm gonna be late. So I had myself all worked up into a tizzy, thinking, wow, who's this guy that coming in to talk about emotional intelligence and he can't even be on time? And then I thought, okay, wait a minute, I got some good things to say. I can help these folks. I can make a contribution. So I recognized that I was getting anxious. And then I intervened in terms of cutting myself some slack. And, it turned out I wasn't late at all. And, things worked out well. But so we have to, consider this. Emotions are very, very important, and try to remain optimistic even when we do have setbacks, while still challenging others. I think that's an important bullet, because sometimes we think, oh, it's just about being nice. Well, it's not, being nice is great, but sometimes you gotta call people on their stuff. I don't know if that's an appropriate euphemism in Portuguese, but like if people aren't doing what they need to do, we need to address it. But it's a matter of how we do it, right? And so according to the research that's been done is, an important point here is to recognize that, all the important stuff that you're learning in your other courses, your theories and your concepts and your best practices, absolutely, important. Deb, without question, you got to know your stuff. Let's face it. But that's just not enough. And that's what this slide is saying, is that just your raw intelligence, the facts, the figures, all that kind of good stuff, what we used to call, or what we still call, sorry, is IQ, or the big G, referred to as general knowledge, necessary but not sufficient. And so a number of studies have been done showing that the differentiating factor in success is actually emotional intelligence. And so when we're all around the boardroom table and you bring in your experience, let's say it's from marketing and someone else there from logistics and someone else there from human resources, someone else there from finance, you get the idea. They're all, leaders or, knowledgeable and certified in those respective disciplines. Yep, that's true. Got to have that. But what's going to really make that difference is emotional intelligence in terms of being persuasive, getting your point across, in terms of being able to build teams and build relationships with others, being able to communicate and explain your point. So that's where emotional intelligence comes in. Now, the cool thing, I think, with respect to emotional intelligence is that they're developed from emotional competencies, which are learned capabilities that contribute to superior or effective work performance. So what this means is we can get better at this stuff. Unlike IQ, we're pretty much born with it. And they say that our brains tap out at about 23 years old in terms of, it don't become fully developed till we're, into our early mid 20s. But with emotional intelligence, we can keep getting better at it. So now I'm not saying that, all old people are the best at it and young people are the poorest, by no means. I'm just saying that life gives us many experiences. So if I messed up with Lucia and, I said something inappropriate to her, you know what? I'm going to have another opportunity to address that. Or I didn't quite get my point across and given a presentation. Well, there's going to be another presentation. And so, we can practice at this and practice and practice and practice and actually get better at it. So here's the competency model. And it's, essentially looking at those which are related to oneself as well as others. And so it starts off with self-awareness. We need a firm grounding on just what it is that we're experiencing, what we're feeling, kind of who we are and where we're at the present time, before we can manage those emotions that we said were so important. And likewise, before we can understand the emotions that our friends and colleagues are experiencing, and before we can then manage that relationship, which will ultimately have an impact on others. And there are some cognitive competencies involved with this as well. And so here they all are, broken out. And, of course, we don't have time to get into all this, but we will when you come down and see us here in Southern California, University of Laverne, the different individual competencies that go to make up each of these clusters, if you will, of competencies of self-awareness, social awareness, self-management, and relationship management. A lot of them are just, obvious, just, from the face of it. We've already talked about emotional self-awareness, empathy, right? Understanding others, being in the shoes of, being able to put yourself in the shoes of others. Emotional self-control under self-management, right? That kind of goes quite hand in hand with emotional self-awareness, knowing where you're at, and then the emotional self-control, being able to control that piece, positive outlook. And then on the management side, again, these are quite straightforward. And yes, you can. Some of you look at inspirational leadership. Well, that's just boring. Well, no, actually, there are ways we can actually make you more inspiring. We can help you to become more inspiring if that's, on your agenda. And then the cognitive cluster, systems thinking, pattern recognition. Pattern recognition, again, being able to see, the overarching trends, themes, patterns in the data that's coming your way. So I've got a homework assignment for you. You say, get serious, come on. No, but I mean, one of the ways in which we get better at this, and sort of a takeaway for you, if you will, is to practice it and try and do it. And it's a little more challenging than it looks. So what I'm asking you to do here is just for fun, because we'll get you to do it when you come down for our course, is find a friend, relative, professor, store clerk, TV character even, whoever, but someone that, live or in person or on the internet that's displaying, one or more of these competencies that we just went through. So what was the context of the situation? So maybe, you're in a restaurant. Well, I guess we can't do that too much these days. Maybe you're at the store and buying something. I think we can still do that. And so what happened? And well, you saw a store clerk handle a very upset customer. And she did that very, very well. She was able to demonstrate empathy for the individual, and she was able to demonstrate conflict resolution skills. So she was a very good conflict manager. And what was the effect? Well, the individual, thanked her, and then, bought even more stuff, maybe, just so as an example. So doing that and being able to code it and being aware of, when are you seeing someone being very adaptable? When are you seeing someone being very persuasive or inspirational? Maybe, later today in one of your classes, one of your professors you find particularly inspiring with respect to how you should move your career or something like this. And so there you go. So next up, a little exercise for you to get you into the concept of resonant relationships. And I want each of you to individually think about a time when you made a change in your life. So maybe you decided, something of some consequence. So, when you went to decide to maybe go back to school, you're going to go to do your MBA at USP. Well, that's a big decision, right? That's a major commitment of resources, of money, of time. So, and all the rest of it. So now my follow-up to that then is, who helped you? Who did you turn to, in this time when you were thinking about change? Who did you reach out to? And what did this individual do or say to help you with this decision you had to make? And how did they make you feel? So please spend a couple moments going through that, thinking about it. And of course, we don't need to know the individual's name, but what did they do or say, and how did they make you feel? Please put some thoughts in the chat box. All right, so we're starting to get some comments stream in. This pandemic moment is testing all leaders, absolutely. Managing risks and expectations. Best leaders will be the ones who learn from the challenges. Yep, absolutely. So now, but look at a time when you were making a change in your life. What was going on? Who helped you? Was it one of your parents? Was it a teacher? Was it one of your friends who stepped up? Maybe a coach, who stepped up, and what did they do? What did they do that helped you? And how did they make you feel? Oh, beautiful. Here's one that just came in. When I changed jobs, there was a coworker who invited me for lunch, even before the shift started. She made me feel calmer about my first day, feeling like I had already a friend. Oh, isn't that wonderful? I love it when organizations or when individuals step up and do that. Sometimes organizations do that as well. Another student says, my wife stayed with me during changes in my career, and being together was the best way to move on. Absolutely. Being with a loved one who really cares, and also, has who has is going to have some reaction to and some investment in, I guess is what I'm looking for, the change that you make, the decisions that you make. I made a decision to work far from home. My family encouraged me, made me feel safe, and knowing it was the right choice. Absolutely, absolutely. Building, trusting relationships is very, very key when we're trying to, make some substantive changes. And this is not a small one. When you're, leaving family and moving far away, you're not going to be in as regular contact with them. And, we all know this Zoom stuff and internet, is great, but it only goes so far. When I decided to do the BA, my family helped me. They said, never stop studying. It made me feel hopeful, right? So we've got a lot of hope going on as well. Encouragement, support. Some years ago, I changed careers because my leader at the time encouraged me and made me believe I would be successful, right? So there it is. We've got expressions of confidence, like, you can do this, right? When I was younger, my girlfriend, who is my wife today, all right, made a good decision there, helped me a lot when I had some difficult situations with my father, right? So these are very, very, tumultuous and important events that occur, in our lives. Another one, when I transitioned into a role in my dream university, UBC, where I work now, I was so worried I would fail, but my new director was very supportive, encouraged me to challenge myself and learn new things. Yeah, so it looks like we need someone in our corner. So we'll. Lucia's looking intent. I don't know. Is there another one coming in? No. We'll take another one if it's coming in. Okay. And then I needed to change cities because of work. My uncle helped me, and the company was bigger than I expected. Whoa. He made me calm, told me that I was capable to get the job. Today I work in that company. Congratulations. He made me think in a different way, right? So what these folks who helped you were doing, right? They're expressing confidence in you. They're making you feel hopeful. They're calming you down. And what this is that they're really tapping into what in this theory, Boyatz's intentional change theory refers to as your ideal self. Who you are. So you can do it. You can make that big move, right? You can make that significant change. You can go back to school, and I know you're going to be successful. And what they're doing there is they're tapping into the first step in the change process, or likely the first step is just understanding, your ideal self. And then the next discovery that needs to be made as well is your real self. This is where your strengths of your ideal self overlap with your ideal self. So where you are right now, there are some certain things that are going quite well for you, and you need to bring that forward as you transition, as well as recognizing where there's some gaps, some differences between that ideal life that you see yourself at that dream university, that dream job, and where you are right now. And in order to move forward, the third discovery suggests that you need to develop a learning agenda. Not a performance plan, that'll come later, but rather, what do I need to learn? What do I need to learn and understand now in order to help me go forward and reduce those gaps. Excuse me. And then because I've been the way I am for so many years, or decades maybe even, we've got to do some experimenting with these new behaviors, practice them. And then, as many of you pointed out, trusting relationships are so key in this process, as we go, on in terms of trying to make this change and trying to make it stick. So I've written a couple pieces, on this, on the application of this process, intentional change theory, to chronic disease in the workplace. And, I did some work with the Veterans Affairs Hospital and with individuals with diabetes. And, I think it can be also applied to individuals trying to find a pathway forward through, through obesity and heart disease and, many of the major comorbidities. In addition to the health behavior change models that they're currently using. I also looked at this in terms of the physician-patient relationship. And I looked at it, so I wrote these two papers about, about the concepts of that. And what emerges from this is something called the positive emotional attractor versus the negative emotional attractor. So this comes again from Richard Boyatzis' work on intentional change. And what's conceived here is two attractors, which actually comes from chaos theory. An attractor is something that's a pattern. And so in emotions, it's a pattern of emotional behavior that is not necessarily identical, but very, very similar. And so in the physician-patient dyad, or pairing, if you will, this is where the patient's ideal self, hopes, dreams, and possibilities are emphasized by the physician, and that is in the resonance condition, as opposed to when the physician emphasizes more their fears, their problems, the shortfalls, the gaps. So, are you taking your medicine? Is the medicine working? Like, those are all important questions, but it sort of puts you on a defensive, right? And then we need to establish learning goals to develop the competence. And then, on the dissonance side is more the performance side. In terms of the autonomic nervous system response, the parasympathetic nervous system is aroused in a PEA condition, versus sympathetic nervous system is aroused in the fight or flight scenario when the negative emotional attractor is established. And many of you mentioned right here, you actually words right from what, our little interchange, how you felt calmer when you were with that individual, and that they calmed you down and it gave you the encouragement. And so that relaxed you and allowed you to open up to learning and new experiences and giving you that confidence that you needed. So as a result of that, you were more likely to be successful. And so I looked at this, and this was one of the first studies, or the first study at the time that I know of when I did this work a few years ago, is the impact of resonance versus dissonance on effective physician-patient relationships and communication. So this, I know it's a whole bunch of text, but if you're interested in reading it later, it essentially says I went to a large medical school and looked at the interactions between medical students and patients, and 116 different videotaped encounters to see if this positive emotional attractor, negative emotional attractor has any significance with outcomes. And my basic question is, does a medical student's overall positive versus negative emotional tone influence his or her effectiveness in a clinical diagnostic encounter with a standardized patient? And so so when they're in that scenario, medical students work with paid actors who pretend to be patients. And this is done at most medical schools, at least in North America anyway, that I know of. And this is part of their clinical skills training. It's called the clinical skills exam. So they've got 15 minutes to work with a patient. And what they're looking for is the standardized patient scores the student, as well as the faculty scores them on how well they've done, and whether or not they're able to get an accurate diagnosis. And so I developed a code book. That's all this slide says. Essentially, is I did a code book with a sample of encounters before I looked at 116 different encounters. And what I found is that these themes, if you will, or themes you would call them, in the positive emotional attractor emerged, as well as the negative emotional attractor. So we're not saying that you can't express any negative emotion or create that, but you can see the ratio of effectiveness, many more themes in the positive emotional attractor to the negative emotional attractor. So these were my statistical results. So I won't get into all the details, except to show you that where the red lines are indicate statistical significance, so that PEA was a much stronger influencer of the outcomes of the standardized patient score and the faculty student score, and then also was a negative emotional attractor. Now, I didn't get any significance with the accuracy of the diagnosis, but I did in terms of the student and faculty's evaluation. And so what this suggests, for further research is trying to determine, in particular, what's the tipping point of positive to negative emotion. So just how much, do we need? Because we know that, and why that's important is that negative emotions are stronger. We remember, unfortunately, the negative emotions longer, and they are more impactful than the positive ones. So then the question becomes, well, how, in order to be effective and move forward and change, how much more positive emotions do we need over negative emotions? So a few tips for you in terms of how to tap into the positive emotional attractor condition. There's 18 of them there. And I mentioned my dog, so you'll see that having pets you can pet is on the list as well. You've already done that in terms of reflecting back on individuals that have helped you or brought out the best in you, as well as, I mentioned today I had a workout and it was all great. So that, physical exercise is another piece, as well as many other activities as well. So that's something for you to look ahead on in terms of how do we tap into that. And then another way of tapping into that is, is through coaching, using those emotionally intelligent competencies that we mentioned, like empathy, for instance, so that we're coaching with compassion, and in particular, coaching with what I call distinctive human strengths if we want to make change. And so what is it, coaching? When we're talking about coaching, well, it's helping others in their pathway forward. It's taking someone, as the second definition says, a valued person from where they are to where they want to be. So coaching is all about the other person. It's not projecting your own stuff on them, but rather, how can you possibly help and move forward the other individual? And in terms of what are strengths, well, a number of individuals of this slide is indicated, or ways in which you can understand your strengths. Individual level traits like optimism and resilience. We talked about the different emotional intelligence competencies, positive emotions. And so out of all that, what I'm interested in are what I call your distinctive strengths, your highest level, among all those strengths, and which they're at or above the tipping point. And there's exercises we can do to help you, get into that. So as I close out for today's session, I see that, we're kind of wrapping things up here. I just wanted to mention that this, what I delivered here today is part of our Leading and Coaching the Human Organization Executive Management Certificate Program over here at the University of La Verne, and which we spend a lot of time going in depth on this for all of you, emerging leaders and managers. So we spend, as I just mentioned at the end, a whole week on coaching as leadership, where we dig deeper into the theory and the practice, and you get lots of practice of coaching and receiving coaching from others. And then in week 2, developing emotional intelligence and resonance, just, how do we do that, and understanding it more deeply. And then the first week I set you up with some fundamentals of human resource management. I know I get a lot of HR practitioners on the course, and so we go over some of the basics with respect to that. And then what we all want, of course, is graduation and party time, and we have a lot of that fun over here as well. So I'll leave you with Leo Buscaglia's quote, who was initially laughed at when he first thought of introducing this concept in one of the university one of the California big universities. He had a whole course on love. And everybody said, oh, no one's going to sign up for your course on love. That's silly. Well, he had hundreds of people, oversold. And one of his key sayings that I love so much is, too often we underestimate the power of a touch, a smile, a kind word, a listening ear, an honest compliment, or the smallest act of caring, all of which have the potential to turn a life around. Those are my references, and obrigado.
Obrigado, professor. Professor, vou pedir a ajuda aqui da Luísa. Tenho uma pergunta aqui para você, tá? Um momento. A pergunta é do Leonardo Siqueira. Ele pergunta assim: professor, você tem alguma sugestão específica sobre como mudar hábitos? Tem muitos livros que falam sobre isso, mas é muito difícil.
Hi again. So I'll help with the translation. So a student called Leonardo Siqueira has asked, Professor, do you have any specific suggestions to helping changing habits? There are a lot of books about it, but sometimes it can be so hard.
That's a good one. And, you know, I particularly hearken back to at the beginning of the year, so many people have personal goals, like they use January 1 as a day to, you know, to do everything. And I've never believed in that too much. And I know at the gym, you can see on December 31st, there's like nobody at the gym. And then on January 1st, it's packed. And then February kind of trails off and all the rest of it. So, you know, what's the deal with the habits? I think understanding habits and habit research, there's a whole body of research on that. And that's really an important one. But I think fundamentally, as you know, I mentioned with the intentional change theory, it starts at the top. You know, you can say, oh yeah, you know, I want to change, but you got to have real personal time on that, reflection about your ideal self. What is your vision? I mean, you know, do you seriously want to, you know, how do you seriously want to be? And you need some input on that from others. And then you need to do an inventory of where you're at. Because, you know, I think Luciana mentioned, I'm a professional bodybuilder, you know, drug-free athlete and all that, but, you know, I've helped some folks along that way. But unless they've got a particular goal in mind of what it is that they're trying to achieve, what's that big vision, the rest of it is just hubris. They're just, you know, it's going to fall apart. And so you have, because the ideal self provides the juice for change. Because once you've got that clear as to what it is, why it's important to you, and how it relates to your own personal values, you know, nothing else will matter. But once you got that set, then the rest of it is just work. It's just, you know, this is what I need to do in order to accomplish it. And then you do it. So if that helps you.
Thank you, Professor. So, agora para o português. O professor falou que é uma ótima pergunta. Ele comentou sobre, especialmente, resolução de ano novo, né? Que dia 31 de dezembro as academias estão vazias, aí chega lá dia 1º de janeiro, tá todo mundo lá, e ele não acredita muito nisso, de resolução de ano novo, porque o importante é entender como os hábitos funcionam, essa é a parte importante. Então, para mudança intencional, o fundamental é você dedicar o seu tempo, você ter a sua motivação, você colocar o esforço, falar com os outros, mas levar a sério. Então, tenha em mente os resultados que você quer, manter o foco em qual é o seu eu ideal, esse eu ideal que você quer buscar, o resultado sério, real, e aí é só se esforçar. Então, depois de você definir o seu objetivo, é trabalho e dedicação.
Obrigado, Luísa. Luísa.
So, you know, the only follow-up in the last student's comments is I think about it a little bit is on habits. You know, there's you know, a little technique that you can try too is to try to put some friction around that habit that you no longer want to do. You know, if you're looking at it from the negative point of view. So let's say, for instance, you're spending too much time on social media. Hey, like, you know, all of us can be accused of that. So what do? Well, one thing you can do is to take that little icon, and instead of having it on your home screen, move it off of your home screen. So that next time you say, well, you know, I shouldn't look at whatever, Facebook, WhatsApp, or, you know, Instagram, whatever. You know, put that away on another's page. So when you go, instead of just, oh yeah, it's right there, oh, I got to go search for it. Well, maybe I won't. Wait a minute. I said I wasn't going to do that as much. You see what I'm saying? But that's temporary. The big thing, I think, is still, the ideal self.
Então, só para complementar a resposta, uma técnica que tem é criar uma fricção para um hábito que você não quer mais, por exemplo. Então, se você tiver, por exemplo, você quer ver menos rede social, que ele falou que é uma coisa que talvez todo mundo tenha um pouquinho, diminuir as redes sociais. Então, você pode pegar o ícone do Instagram, Facebook, o que for, e ao invés de estar na tela inicial do celular, você coloca na página do lado. Então, quando você for acessar, você vai ter que procurar pelo ícone, vai ter que procurar pela rede social. E aí, nesse tempo, é o tempo de você pensar, pera, não, eu não queria fazer isso. Então, é algo temporário, não é permanente, e o importante realmente é ter a visão geral do seu objetivo final, mas que é uma técnica que pode ajudar a curto prazo.
Muito obrigado, Luísa. Professor, a gente tem uma outra pergunta aqui. Essa pergunta vem da Elaine Cristina. Ela diz assim: How to break a toxic behavior from a boss, professor?
Yeah. That's a tough one. And sometimes I found that, because I've done a lot of coaching with executives and the like, and with some really high people, and I know this what may sound surprising, but sometimes they don't know that they're toxic. That may seem, how could they not know? And so I think creating awareness can sometimes help. I'll give you a personal example. I won't use any profanity here with you folks, but one time I was in the role of a senior advisor in this one organization, as part of my background, if you've read it, as I used to be in human resource management. And we had this one senior leader to whom I was supposed to provide support. And he was known as being very toxic, very abrasive with people, very rude. But, everybody would just sort of cower and go away. So this one time we had this situation. I was an advisor on HR issues. And so he came in and asked me for my advice on, what I thought. When we had an employee who, well, let's just say she did something she shouldn't have done. And he said, what are we going to do? And my advice was that, we don't have enough to fire her. The best we could do is to suspend her. And this is why, and it's based on jurisprudence on cases we've had and so on. And then he proceeded to berate me. And he said, this was the, stupidest advice and, yada, yada. He just literally profanity and everything. So what I did is I just somehow, I thought, in hindsight, it may have been a career limiting gesture. But what I did is I stood up to him and I said, I'm sorry that you find my advice stupid and full of, whatever. And I repeated everything he said verbatim in the same tone that he used. And he recoiled. He was shocked. It was like someone was playing a record back to him that he had not heard before. And ever since that time, he just totally tuned it down a notch. And we had a much better relationship because it became self-evident on how he was, if that helps. So in some way, you've got to create awareness of that individual. And I mean, if they are just, fundamentally toxic and they know it and they like it, then you've got another issue. Then it may be something about you have a choice of you either keep your head down and try to survive, or to leave the organization, or to, try to, if they're doing something, illegal or highly inappropriate or counter policy and all that sort of stuff, then, go take it up with your boss, his boss, with human resources or so on. But, I think a lot of times it's simply the awareness. And, you get that through coaching. Another thing, is that part of me to try to create that awareness through coaching is, getting them involved in some sort of leadership development. Because I mentioned I've coached a lot of senior executives, and when they get feedback on themselves with like a 360-degree evaluation of their from their colleagues, from their supervisor, and from the people they work with, and it says, 10 out of 10 people are saying this about you, that's pretty solid, evidence that, maybe that's something you want to think about.
Thank you, professor.
Thank you. So, o que o professor falou é que como lidar com um chefe tóxico, né? Primeiro, ele falou de criar consciência, que muitas pessoas que são tóxicas, na verdade, não sabem que são tóxicas. Aí ele contou a história dele mesmo, que ele era um consultor sênior de RH, e ele teve que lidar com os executivos sêniores também, que estava tendo problema. Ele não quis entrar em detalhes na história, mas uma funcionária tinha feito algo de errado, e esse líder sênior tóxico pediu o conselho do professor, do Dr. Dick, e aí ele disse o que ele deu o conselho dele, falou que não podia ser demitida a funcionária, mas que podiam suspender ela, que seria o ideal naquela situação. E esse executivo sênior ficou bravo e começou a ofender o professor e começou a falar que a ideia dele era estúpida, que ele não sabia do que ele estava falando, usou palavrões e várias coisas. O que o professor Dick, então, falou foi, desculpa que você acha que meu conselho é isso, isso, isso. E repetiu palavra por palavra o que o executivo disse. E nessa hora, esse executivo ficou chocado, porque ele nunca tinha ouvido outra pessoa falar as coisas que ele mesmo falava. Então, nessa hora, ele adquiriu consciência do que ele estava falando. Então, essa seria uma tática também. Você conseguir repetir para a pessoa exatamente o que ela fala, para ela conseguir se enxergar. Ele deu a dica também de sugerir um curso de coaching, porque coaching ajuda com a autoconsciência, ao mesmo tempo em que desenvolve habilidades de líderes. Então, a pessoa tóxica talvez ainda aceitaria isso e todo mundo seria ganhando com isso. Mas a autoconsciência é a chave, a não ser que a pessoa saiba que é tóxica e não queira mudar. Mas aí já é outro problema.
Muito obrigado, professor. Muito obrigado, professor. Muito obrigado, Luísa. Pessoal, obrigado pela presença de todos vocês. Eu vou liberar vocês então, porque a aula já está para começar agora. E, professor, gostaria de convidar você a deixar uma mensagem final então para os nossos alunos.
So, Professor, feel free to give a final message to the students. They're soon going to classes, so now it's your time.
Oh, thank you so much. I really feel privileged and honored to be here with you folks. I really enjoy learning with you when you do come down, and I will cherish this time that we have had together. Remain hopeful. We'll find a pathway through. And be smart about your emotions. Take care, everybody.
Então, o professor agradeceu muito o tempo que passou. Ele espera que após a pandemia a gente possa visitar ele na faculdade em Laverne com os cursos, para todo mundo se manter consciente, responsável e aproveitar. E desejo uma boa aula a todos. Professor, once again, thank you very much for your tips, for your knowledge, and for your lecture. We enjoyed it a lot.
Thank you.
Pessoal, só um último recado. Desculpem aí pelo problema que a gente teve no começo com as legendas, mas só para avisar, quando o vídeo da palestra estiver disponível para vocês no sistema acadêmico, já vai estar com as legendas, tá? E com elas todas revisadas. Bom, era isso, pessoal. Muito obrigado pela presença e até uma próxima. Tchau, tchau.